Hello, everybody. This is your pal, Tezor Mogas, and today I've decided to do a little update, seeing as we're coming up on the end of summer. I've decided to do a little update for August 2025, see where we're at, see where we expected to be, and comparing it to where we are. So today I chose the color black. Get it? It's a black shirt, black screen. I like to change the colors up. You're never going to win on colors. But thankfully, thanks to Apple Keynote, by the way, they're not sponsoring me. Apple is not sponsoring me. But Apple Keynote is how I make all these presentations. And so far, so good. I think people like the colors. I think people like the backgrounds. It's so important. It's so important to have this screen here because it keeps you on track, number one, as to what you were actually decided to talk about, number one. And also, if you're watching at home, sometimes when you're just watching someone through a screen, it's like, you're looking at their face and you're analyzing their face and their hair and their look, and you're not even paying attention to what they're saying. At least that's how I get, So, it works for some people, works for some vloggers. But for me, I like to be outside. Even Ontario government has recently put out a rule that they're requiring the Ontario Public Service. So that doesn't include all government workers. It's really by an employer basis, but guess what? The government of Ontario employs a lot of people and they're really leading the charge. And he says it's for economic reasons. And, those are real. Those are real. If you go for a walk in downtown Toronto, there's a place called The Path Financial District. It used to be so crowded in The Path like 25 years ago. I mean, we're not talking about the Stone Ages. We're not talking about 100 years ago. We're talking about 25 years ago, where it's like you can have a hair salon down there and never run out of business. Never run out of business. Now it's like a ghost town. You go in there, it's like these beautiful buildings. You're walking around, but it's a ghost town. You can hear a pin drop. And that is generally one of the motivations for that is remote work and the transition to full-time work from home. And people live farther away from downtown core than they did many decades ago. So, it's a problem. It's a problem if you care about the country. And I do. I care about the country. I care about Ethiopia. I care about East Africa. I care about Africa in general. I care about Asia. I care about every country on every continent. But I believe, I've said it on this channel, the only way you can try to help people that are less fortunate, that don't have the same opportunities as you, is if you invest in the country that is investing in you. In a way, Canada is the largest investor in Canada, by far. If you look at the healthcare system, free healthcare, free. It's really not free. You pay for it. You pay for it through taxation. I can't talk today, but I'm going to keep trying. You pay for it through taxation. And even the education system, having K through 12, free education is standard in most countries. And also public transit. How about public transit? What's the point of spending $30 billion on Ontario Line and extensions, various extensions, if no one is going to be traveling to and from downtown? And then there's also all the property down there. If nobody's renting out the spaces, all that rental income goes away, which is fully taxable, by the way. So the higher the rents, the more taxes are collected by the authorities in power, federal government, provincial government. So in a way, the country benefits from high taxes, even though its people probably don't benefit from high taxes either. And then there's also property taxes and all these different things that have been washed away from work from home. So you might ask, what is my personal situation? So my personal situation in my day job, full disclosure, is full-time remote work. And hospitals, I do work for a hospital, and hospitals are just generally self-governing. Now, they take orders from Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care, but, very, very forceful orders, okay? So it's not like they can't listen to what the ministry has to say to them. But hospitals are generally on a case-by-case basis. Each hospital has a different footprint. Each hospital has different facilities. Some are over capacity, believe it or not, and some are under capacity. But when it comes to an expense, scenario. If you're just looking at it from a financial and operational standpoint, the hospital and many employers save money by having people work from home, full-time remote. And save money how? Because you are buying your own equipment. When you are logging in, it's the same applications, the same Windows operating system that you would be using on site that you are using at home, but the difference is the hardware, the equipment is yours. So if you're complaining that the computer is so slow, too slow, you got to replace it with a new computer or repair that computer somehow. And all that time and energy fixing and repairing computers is no longer borne by your employer. It's borne by the individual that is working from home. And then there's also internet. Employers pay regardless, but the different fees. There's also electricity, which is actually they're going to pay regardless too. But the big thing is the repair and maintenance costs of all this computerized equipment, which is now borne by the worker and not by the employer. So if you're looking at that, but looking at it as at a macro scale, we are probably by full-time work from home, and everything is going to be done by teleconferencing. Every job interview in the future is going to be teleconferencing. Every interaction that you have with another human being, your coworker, your supervisor, your manager is online, and you see each other at most you see each other every 3 months. We're probably not doing Canada a favor by doing that, because now if you look at the streets, all these entrepreneurs that took their life savings and put it into business and are paying $5,000 a month, if the streets are empty, those shops and those venues and those businesses are going to be empty too. Recently, I went into a McDonald's, and whether it's a weekday or a weekend, you expect there to be people at a McDonald's, because they have the cheapest food, chemically processed, but that's a whole different conversation. But when you go into a McDonald's and it's completely empty, and for 10 or 15 minutes there are no orders, that's how you know something is wrong here economically. 10 or 15 minutes. Once upon a time, I worked at McDonald's, by the way. I think I mentioned it in previous videos. 2011 to 2014, when I turned 20 years old, I said, I'm out of here. But it was a good experience, a great experience. So I'm very familiar with pricing. In 2014, that was more than 10 years ago, I realized that. But I was looking at, the menu's largely still the same. So if you look at, not talking the small burgers, junior chicken, and so on and so forth, if you're looking at quarter pounder meal, you're looking at $14, I think, or maybe $12.39 plus tax. So plus tax for the combo. Does anyone know what a combo is? $12 plus tax. When I was there, it was $8.12, taxes included, HST included, $8.12. And now we're talking in 2025, $12 plus tax, which puts you in the $13 or $14 range per person. It used to be 2 can dine for like $9.98. That was the promotion. So McDonald's is like the baseline if you want to check inflation and whether inflation is real or not. And that's at McDonald's. So think of it. They have the supply chain advantage. They've been doing this for decades and decades and decades as a business. So they have low prices, the lowest prices, because they have the lowest costs. If you're talking about a startup food and beverage business that offers the same hamburgers, same animal and maybe better tasting, if you're getting $12 per person at McDonald's, imagine it's going to be $15, maybe $20 per person somewhere else. And high prices are not good for anyone. Nobody's a beneficiary. Government's not a beneficiary. Workers are not a beneficiary. Nobody's a beneficiary from high inflation. So, I create these networking events to have a venue to where I can talk. And I think now what I'm going to do with the videos is I've now created a new series. It's called EAS Studies. EAS Studies, where we look at the past. Maybe it's the distant past. Maybe it's the recent past. But for me, I like businesses, and I like, understanding why does this business do well? Why does this business not do well? And so on. So, my favorite expression, I got a lot of expressions, but my favorite expression in the English language is all I want to know is where I'm going to die so I never go there. Okay, I'll repeat that because it's so important. All I want to know is where I'm going to die, so I never go there. And that's what East Africa Showcase is about. It's about promoting Ethiopia. I call it East Africa Showcase to try to help Habashas. Those are the ones that are resistant to this. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. I don't get any likes. I'm okay with that too. I don't like anyone's posts on social media, so I don't expect too many people to like my posts either. But I know you're watching. Believe me, I know you're watching. I can sense your presence. Through the screen, I can sense your presence, and I know you're watching. So, keep watching. See what I come up with. See if this is interesting, informative entertainment. But no one should expect business to be easy. Nobody. Okay, the word business is really a 95% failure rate, okay? And that means you're trying to get into 5% of people that are successful with sustainable cash flows, positive cash flows, where you're not relying on creditors and you're not relying on investors. To be honest, there aren't too many investors in Canada, okay? Nobody wants to spend one penny. And that's the situation. We all have to, we're all in the same market, labor market. We're all in the same investment, capital markets. And yeah, hopefully that changes one day. But for right now, nobody's an investor. So you're really relying on your own income and your creditor's income. And for me, Tesor Moges, like August 2025, what I realized is like, when you see a problem, you can either just look the other way and pretend it doesn't exist, pretend that, it's someone else's problem. I can very easily just stick to my day job and wait for my pension. That's an honorable thing to do. Many people are like that. I'm going to wait for until I pay off the mortgage and wait for my pension. But nobody can predict what the next 10 years are going to look like, let alone 20 years. Nobody can predict it. Economically, nobody knows if there's going to be a free trade agreement between Canada and the United States a year from now. Nobody knows. And I saw recently, like one of the news articles was, Switzerland has a higher tariff rate on exports from Switzerland to the United States, 39%. But guess what? Canada has 35% on things that are not covered by the current free trade agreement, which, I think there's a 50-50 chance that it gets terminated. Something that the US administration clearly wants to do. But back to Switzerland. Switzerland has 39%, but guess what? What percentage of exports from Switzerland goes to the United States? And we're talking Swiss chocolates, we're talking Swiss cheese, we're talking about Swiss watches, luxury items, which I'm sure people are buying because they're the best. But guess what? 13%, 13% of their exports go to the United States. Most of their trade, their biggest customers are within Switzerland and within the rest of Europe. I don't think they're part of the European Union. But when I saw that, it's like, Canada's not doing as bad on the trade situation. It's not true, because Canada does 75% of its exports, 75% with United States. And Mexico, I learned today, actually, that Mexico is a little higher, 79%. So almost 80% of the exports of Mexico to the United States. But guess what? Mexico didn't put retaliatory tariffs on US imports. Mexico is facing the same tariffs that Canada is facing. Canada had the approach of putting tariffs on US imports, which, we pay the tariffs. And Canada is one of only 2 countries that has retaliated so far with on the tariff situation, Canada and China. So which country is going to be more impacted? Canada or Switzerland? And I think Switzerland is for the pharmaceuticals, actually. A lot of pharmaceuticals, meaning drugs, medications, comes from Switzerland. And apparently they didn't want to give the US administration what they wanted. So 39%, but that's on 13% of exports. If this free trade agreement doesn't work, if it's terminated, believe me, Canada is not going to be in a good position. So just on that matter alone, how can you start a business and how can you run a business if your expenses might go up double digits? Now, hopefully that's a one-time thing. Even if it happens, worst case scenario, it happens. There's no free trade agreement. 35% tax on imports from Canada to the United States, which I don't imagine any scenario where the Canadian government doesn't put tariffs on US imports. So, there's that view. There's that view that we should match Mr. Trump with every single tariff. As Ontario Premier has said that. And he's going to ratchet it up, and he's probably not going to let up, faster. But who knows? Who knows? I think Canadians is my personal prediction. I'm someone who likes to talk about everything. Politics, business, it's all interconnected at the end. But I think Canadians expected the rest of the world to put tariffs on US imports in response to US putting taxes on basically every country. No country has been exempted from tariffs. Ethiopia, I don't think they mentioned the tariffs yet, but I think it's going to be a minimum of 10%. 10%, which is a lot, because where are you going to find the dollars to pay that 10% tax? But it's going to be people that pay it, and people will adjust. And so far, in the inflation numbers in the US, they're going up, but not as much and not as quickly as people have thought. And it's going to be interesting to see what they do with the interest rates too. I really don't think that 25 basis points is going to really help an individual borrower that much, but it does help the stock market, by the way. So stock market, when interest rates go down, more people with money, savings, put their money into the stock market, and it goes up. These tech stocks, what is a stock? A stock is a leading indicator. If people expect a company to do well, NVIDIA, if people expect more people to be using AI for either commercial or personal use, they're going to need more NVIDIA chips. And the chips that NVIDIA is producing 5 years from now, 10 years from now, are going to be way better than whatever they have today. And, 10 or 15 years ago, no one ever heard of NVIDIA. So I think they're like the most valuable company, $4 trillion. $4 trillion. That's more than the GDP of many European countries. I think France and UK, the countries that used to go around colonizing the world. But yeah, NVIDIA is a big deal. And yeah, stock market will be helped with lower interest rates, and also government borrowing. It's going to be reduced expenses because governments pay the interest rate to whoever wants to buy a bond. So yeah, bonds are actually called risk-free rate. I don't even know how I got there, but it's a tough economic situation. Let's talk about small business for the rest of this video. Let's talk about small business. Oh, actually, I got to talk about one more. Whole Foods. Whole Foods is closing 2 locations. Two of their premier locations, Yonge and Shepherd, and Leaside. Leaside is Bayview and Eglinton area. It's pretty close. And actually, my first hospital job was in a hospital that was around the Bayview location. So it's like going down memory lane. It wasn't Sunnybrook, but it was one of the hospitals that is hidden there. It was called Holland Bloorview. I'll tell you the name. Holland Bloorview Rehabilitation Hospital, and that's probably how I ended up at SickKids. But maybe I'll save that story for another day. So anyways, I went there to Leaside because I was so shocked. Whole Foods, Amazon bought Whole Foods, acquired the company for I think $13 billion in 2017. $13 billion, because I remember 2017, I was so surprised that Amazon bought it. They must see something in it. But to think, when they opened that location too, like I believe it was 10 years ago, it's like perfectly good. They have shoppers, but they couldn't make, like, does anyone think that Whole Foods would be closing if they were making money in those locations? Probably not. But supermarket, food business, whether it's packaged food, like it really depends on the location and how often buyers shop. So, it's a tough economic environment for large businesses and for small businesses. So in business, you have 2 options. It's either you continue with negative cash flow or you make adjustments, which are tough. It's tough for the people that work there. I saw on one of the news articles, they said people were crying because it was a shock for the people that worked in the store. They put their blood, sweat, and tears into the store, and then one day, they just announced it this month, like I think a week ago, beginning of August. In July, it looked like everything was all good. And then now by end of August, those two locations are closed. Not every Whole Foods location is closing, but those two are. And Young and Shepherd, it surprises me. And it goes back to the work from home thing. I'm pretty sure Young and Shepherd was in a commercial like office area, and a lot of those office areas did not return. Office workers did not return post COVID. So, we got flies in the building tonight. I'm talking about Whole Foods. But Whole Foods, Amazon, they'll figure it out. They're making plenty of money elsewhere in other businesses. And that's what we need too. As an individual, you can't continue to rely on one income. And, diversification, that is the best way to have a chance of success and have a chance of increasing your income. And I really believe in that. East African Showcase, our networking events are designed to help you, help me, help everybody in the room, but I need you to be there. Your participation is required. And, I think at the beginning, with any business, if I wanted to open a restaurant, once again, I don't think I'm thinking about restaurants after describing Whole Foods, but the situation at Whole Foods, if I were to open a restaurant, it's not like you're going to open a restaurant and everyone's going to be falling in love with it immediately. It's going to take time. You love what you have to offer. And clearly, if you're thinking about business, if you're contemplating business, you're pretty good at saving money. Otherwise, if you were broke, you would never think about investing and starting a business. But you love what you have to offer. And now you got to go find a way to make the world, or not make, but influence the world to also to love it also, so that they make time, they spend their time, their energy, and their interests, eventually with their money as well, coming to your events, coming to your stores, and buying something. People buy things from people. There are always alternatives. There are always cheaper alternatives. There are always, like with food, just to go back, taste is a pretty important thing. If I'm going to spend $40 per person at a restaurant, the food better be damn good. It better be much more interesting than what I have at home. Otherwise, you're never going to see me there again. And then also you go on the internet and you start reviewing. One bad review can have a huge influence on somebody. So whether it's legitimate or not, usually you can tell. But few people would go out of their way to review a business that negatively if it had a positive impact on their life. People are really buying the difference that you can make for them, and anyone can do it. Anyone can do it. Whether your industry is food, whether it's fashion, whether it's hairstyling, whether it's any kind of business you can think of, You really have to love what you're doing, because there are times where you're not going to make any money. There are times where it feels like a waste of time. There are times where it's just, it's not working. But for me, with East Africa Showcase, it's like I either put $200 a month into a stock brokerage account and hopefully it goes up. It probably will go up. But that's over 5, 10, 25 years. I can promise you, if you buy S&P 500, which is the 500 top companies of the United States, it will go up. But by how much? By how much? That's a big question. And, all I want to say is $200 a month into a stock market and, becoming rich when I'm in my 60s or 70s is that's cool. That's cool. I mentioned pensions earlier. Sitting around and waiting for a pension is cool. But when you have the opportunity, when you see that there are problems and that you can step in and get involved, I say get involved. So that's what I'm trying to do. $200 a month moving forward. I think I'm going to rent the room for once a month from 8 p.m. to probably 9:30, because that's the challenge we have, is the room. And I thought they would be a lot more lenient with the room. Unfortunately not. So I got to leave on time. But next time I think I'm going to go to 9:30. And yeah, it'll be good. We'll keep improving it, keep improving the service, keep improving the experience that you get. and make it an experience that you can't get elsewhere, I don't think there's a way we can lose. The only way you can lose in business is if you run out of money or you run out of passion, out of interest. Because really, you can sense whenever you go to a restaurant and someone really doesn't want to be there. I got restaurants on my mind right now. But even with cars are essential. Cars, especially with people living farther away, at a certain point, you need a car. But what kind of car really depends on the driving experience. People spend $75,000 on a Tesla electric car. Why? Because it drives better than what else is being offered in the marketplace. You don't buy it to support Elon Musk, or you want him to, sleep peacefully in life, or you want the Tesla shares, the stock price to go up. You buy it because you love the car. You love the car and you love the difference that it can make in your life. You love the car and you love the difference that it can make in your life. So hopefully this video made a positive difference on you. I'm probably going over time, but this is my update for August 2025. Thanks for watching to the end. And stay tuned. Our videos, EAS studies, I like businesses. So our videos are going to be about the past, and our in-person events are going to be about the future. It's going to be about the people in the room. It's going to be about strategizing for the future. And I think it'll be really cool. Stay tuned. This is Tesor Mogas. Thank you very much. See you later.